haven't used that as specifically as a topic before.
Okay.
Hang on. Doesn't.
Is it working?
Yes, now it's working.
Okay.
Okay. Well, Joe, you asked a question about the Sambhojana, most specifically the word energy, and
Yeah.
it's good to put things into context so that you understand where that comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm pointing at right now is the relationship between the Eightfold Noble Path and the seven factors of enlightenment, or the Sambhojana. Now, the seven factors of enlightenment are also in the Satipatthana Sutta in the right place where you would expect it. And it is also part of the wholesomeness. So we could say that if we can understand how the Eightfold Noble Path is fulfilled, it's fulfilled into factors of enlightenment. That's the whole point of it is that when the skills are developed, they're developed into the Sambhojana. And there they are, laying right out in front of us, basically in the proper order that you would expect. Okay. So in the Sambhojana, the first item on the list is unremitting sati.
Yeah.
Unremitting. Now, what does that word mean? Because that's part of the issue of why this is an enlightenment factor rather than a skill in development. That this is the developed skill of mindfulness so that your mindfulness keeps coming back and coming back and coming back whenever you need it. It'll be there for you. That's what we mean by unremitting. Now, a lot of Westerners will use a Western word like always. But unremitting is not the same thing as an always. So let me give you several examples of that. The first one is my hand here is the example of a drum head, and this is the mallet for the drum. Is this the way to play the drum? Well, the mallet is always in place. It's there. It's
right. Right.
But
no, it needs to hit the drum.
Okay, so this is not the sati that the Buddha is talking about then. It's not that kind of an always sati. It's more like this. It's there.
Okay.
It comes up. It pops up. Back again. Come again. Okay. And so this is the skill then that needs to be developed. This is why the wording of the Anapanasati is in the sense of sati at the ana and sati at the pana. Anapanasati means mindfulness to take a long, deep in breath, and mindfulness to take a long, deep out breath. So there's two different satis. And if you've got it on a long breath and on the short breath, that's unremitting so long as your mindfulness of your breathing. Right? Makes perfect sense when you phrase it like that, huh?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the whole quality that we want to use the breathing in order to develop the sati until it becomes unremitting. That it's there. When is it there? Whenever we need it. In fact, it's going to be there if it's unremitting at those times when we need it the most. That in fact, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa talks about it in many ways, but he talks about it that we can see illness of the body. It's just another opportunity to practice sati. Right? Or one that I like to use for the Westerner, wakey, is just you're tuning down the road, you're riding around, you're doing whatever you're doing, and all of a sudden you see the red and blue lights flash in the rearview mirror and all over the car, and you hear that siren go off. Okay, how do you feel?
I'm gonna start freaking out.
Right.
Yeah.
That's when you need the sati right there.
Right.
Right. That's what we're practicing. We're practicing so that we can have that sati when we need it the most. Okay. That is basically what you could say in Army language is the word Sati is the same thing as the word incoming.
Mm.
That here it comes, right? The arrow is in the air. Can you stand aside? That's what we mean then by the unremitting Sati, is that you can be there for it. You can be alert. You can wake up instead of going off into the feelings that the situation would normally create or occur for, because that word normally here is also another word for reaction. The word reaction, because we react. And what does reaction mean? But we're just doing the same old actions over and over and over again. So we respond to the cop the way that we would respond to a great big woman marching into the room to yell at all the kids in the room.
Mm.
And so how do we respond? With fear. We were taught to respond with fear. That big woman who marched into that room with all the kids and making that noise, she wanted them to be afraid of her. Mm-hmm. And they blindly complied. Yes, Mama, I will. Or yes, ma'am, we will be fearful of you. We'll break out crying and bawling and have a big time at it. And that's how we respond to police. And sometimes people get killed by responding to police with fear. Because the cops pick up on that fear, they get fearful back. And then the next thing you know, any wrong move and somebody's going to get shot. Because everybody's afraid. So if nobody's afraid, then there's no danger. Can we have the mindfulness to do that?
So we have to be aware. We have to be aware before the fear arises, or as the fear is arising, and then just over and over again, aware.
I would say
Aware.
the quicker you are, or the stronger your wisdom, the more that you would know. In fact, just getting into that car and driving is putting yourself into danger, and you can expect anything.
That's true.
And so you could be on alert and mindful during the drive, knowing that you could get stopped, because that's the way things are in the United States. It doesn't matter how you're driving, it matters whether the cop wants to stop you or not.
Right.
So if you feel really good about yourself, then you could deal with the cop. But if you deal with it in the sense of being angry or belligerent or any of that kind of stuff, he's going to react to that. So the right thing to do it is, good evening, officer. Glad to see you.
Hmm.
I'm really glad to know that you guys are out on the road giving us protection. I heartily support the police. What can I do for you, officer? Get him in a good mood.
Hmm.
You have that choice. That's in
true.
fact part of the energy that we're talking about. Do you have enough energy that you can pull that off?
Do I? That would be a difficult one.
Until we practice.
Right.
That's what the whole quality of meditation is about, is to practice and continue to practice and continue to practice until the Sati is there. Now, the one thing about this Sati is, why do we bother to wake up? The answer is to see what's going on. You could say it literally as wake up to smell the coffee. You ever heard that? What does that mean? It means to wake up and become into sensory awareness. The coffee is here, it's real. All you have to do is take a deep breath, and there it is for you. All right? So this is the quality that we're looking for then, is to wake up and look at what's going on. Look at how we feel about things. Because only then, when we do an investigation, can we make a choice about what we're going to do. Okay. Now, that investigation is actually unremitting investigation, which is the second one of the 7 factors of enlightenment. Unremitting Sati that the investigation cannot be unremitting until the Sati is. Kicking the Sati into the unremitting gear, and then every time Sati comes up, it's good enough and strong enough, an investigation will happen. And if that investigation is strong enough and wise enough, then that means that when we see that it's unwholesome, we will automatically have the effort to do the right thing. That's the energy. Effort, one's right effort, when it is a skill, is actually quite energetic. It's Johnny on the spot. You don't even have to think hardly about taking a deep breath. You just the reminding of taking the deep breath. Had the deep breath is the same thing. It's the same, almost within the same mind moment. But they coexist that way. Okay, the waking up and the deep breath, rather than waking up, talking ourselves into taking a deep breath and then taking a deep breath. All right, so this is what we mean then by the effort. When the effort is a good skill, it is then left to be called energetic. It's no longer an effort. Now, how we develop this is when right effort and right view or right investigation and right sati, they run and circle around each other, very much like weights or barbell or weightlifting. And we weightlift with these three objects in the mind so that they become strong and powerful. Or another way of saying it is that they're fast and that they're skillful. Okay. So this is why they're referred to as skills, both in the uh, actually they're referred to as features in the Eightfold Noble Path of number 117, features of a correctly organized mind. But in the seven factors of enlightenment, we're actually looking at what an organized mind actually is. All right. And so now we've done 3 out of 7. And the next one on the list is actually in the Pali. It's Piti Sukha. Piti and Sukha here are actually combined together, unremitting Piti Sukha. What does that mean? Or excuse me, not unrefined, unremitting. Over and over and over again, we can practice being in a really good state. In this state of sukha means that we're free from suffering, and the piti part of it has to do with attitude. So that the step 4, when that comes by, oh, I've just got a gecko landed on the leg. Oh, there he goes. Did you see that?
Yeah.
And so the fourth one of Piti Sukha is actually the outcome of having practiced Anapanasati, developing Piti as a skill and Sukha as a skill. And we also notice and reflect upon the fact that Sukha is the exact opposite of Dukkha. And that's true in several languages, including the Thai language and the Gujarati and the Pali, and all in. But the one from Thai actually was learned. It brought it out of the Thai, out of the Pali into the Thai language, but it came out in that relationship. Okay, the sukha that the Buddha teaches, that is a skill to be developed, is to develop joy. But when we develop it, when we call it joy, that kind of means a different thing in the West. In fact, I've had students often say, well, I've got joy, but it's not enough. I want more joy. And then I'm saying, okay, now we're missing something. Okay, so it's not really joy that I should be teaching the students, but rather the real underlying issues about joy is, number one, is satisfaction. That satisfaction is the number one point, and that satisfaction actually has a kind of a twin brother to it, and that twin brother is success. Success and satisfaction. Now, which one comes first doesn't really matter, But in fact, normally in the practice of Anapanasati, in the sutras itself, it's actually piti sukha, and it's spoken of piti and sukha, but it's often developed the other way around, that you develop the sukha that turns into the piti.
Okay.
And how that happens is because we begin to gain the sukha and start to practice it with just right mindfulness, or sati, right view, and right effort. With the right effort being to remove unwholesome thoughts and to gladden the mind. By gladdening the mind, by perking the mind up, by starting to intentionally, habitually gladden the mind, then we begin to have the feelings gladden also. This is where, so if we talk to ourselves about, really, I don't have anything to do right now, everything is okay. There's no alligators or crocodiles or emails to do or anything right now for the next 10 minutes. I could just sit here and relax finally. Okay. That takes care of the fact that now we can feel secure. We don't have to have anything on our agenda. There's nothing on the plate. There's nothing that has to be done right now, that we're good to go. Or good to stay is even better. And so this feeling of safety and security is also deeply wrapped up with the feeling of comfort. And that this is something, this is the reason why in the old days of the Buddha, why they sat the way that they did, was because that was known to be a comfortable posture. And they still sit that way. I've got a stepdaughter who is now 19. She still does it. I met her when she was 12 or 13. And she sits in the lotus posture at every meal, because Thai people eat on the floor anyway.
Right.
And here the Western Buddhism is all about correct posture, when posture's got nothing to do with your mind state. In fact, that what we're looking for in the mind state is comfort. Well, it's really hard to have the mind comfortable if the body is not comfortable.
Mm.
And this is an important point, that sitting in long meditation sessions, making the body uncomfortable, is not what the Buddha taught. But he taught comfort. That's why at Wat Suan Mokkh you're allowed to stand after, even they don't have long sittings. They only have 30 minutes at the longest. But even then, if you're uncomfortable, it's okay to stand. Or even go
Okay.
out in the yard and do walking meditation if your back hurts or something like that. To really be gentle and easy on the body.
Yeah.
All right. But in fact, I can tell you a little story about this. This has something to do with uh, the way that horses are trained. And I think that I got this off of a video out of the 1950s. It must have been a Walt Disney thing. But there's a European way of training the fine horses that they have in Europe versus the way that cowboys in America trained horses for 100 years. In the West, they would corral the horse and then walk up to him, throw a saddle on, jump on his back while everybody's trying to hold the horse down, and he starts bucking out of terror, right? And after 7 days of doing that, finally the horse will settle down.
Mm.
Okay. In Europe, the European way is that they have a large barn with a dirt floor, but that the horse is led in there, and then the trainer comes out and feeds the horse for an apple or whatever like that, and pets the horse and spends some time with the horse and becomes friends with the horse. A day later, he comes out. The trainer comes out wearing a saddle on his shoulder, draped down, and he shows the horse and points it to the horse and gives the horse another apple and get the horse to like the saddle, and then very slowly and carefully he puts the saddle on the back of the horse without cinching it. You see where this is going, right?
Mm.
Several days later, they have a 12-year-old boy who has already been experienced in this because he was trained on trained horses, and so he knows how to sit still And so they came and they lift him up and set him gently onto the horse's back while they allow the horse to watch what's going on.
Mm.
And by the time that they took 7 days in America to bronco a wild stallion, they do exactly the same thing, but everybody wins
Mm.
in the European way of doing it. Now, guess how most meditation students practice their meditation?
More like the cowboys.
Uh-huh. Okay. That's it. That's exactly right. And that's why their horse doesn't have much piti sukha.
Mm.
And so that's why it's so difficult to get into these altered states where they're known to as first jhana, is because students are not actually talking themselves into it in kind of this other way of training horses. To be very, very gentle, be nourishing, be very friendly with yourself. And
Okay.
here we are in the habit of being critical because we have been around other adults who were critical.
Mm.
And in fact, when we're raised by cowboys, we're going to be treating the wild horse of our own mind like a cowboy would. Jump on it and ride it and watch it buck. That in fact, that's the whole quality that we're talking about now can be also be said in the sense that when the children are about the age of 6 in the West, they're told that they've got to learn the ABCs, they've got to learn arithmetic, you got to sit down at this desk and do what you're told and do your homework, clean up your room, put down your cell phone. You've ever heard any of that?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, that's it. That's the cowboy jumping on the horse.
Mm.
How did you react to that? Were
I
you a
mean,
bit of a bucking bronco in your
no,
own mind?
I've no, I mean, as a kid, I think I was following the the routine. I thought that it would lead somewhere. That I kind of fell into the story and thought, well, if I just do this, then I get to middle school, and then I get to middle school, and then I get to high school, and then, so I just got to follow this program. And from what I
Mhm.
know, those people that jumped off the program, they're really unsuccessful. So I better stay
Oh,
stay
you
on
mean
this
like
thing,
Steve Jobs and Elon
right?
Musk and, and those guys?
Right.
Yeah, the ones who were really unsuccessful.
But that's how my as a kid, that's how I developed anyways. I mean, I know it.
Yes,
That's what it was.
exactly. So that's what we're meaning is that we all were raised in a society and we go along to get along, going for delayed gratification and often resenting it because we don't get what we want. And sometimes we rebel. And if we rebel, sometimes then we feel guilty for having rebelled. And so we're just all up in a cycle of bad feelings.
Mm.
And we weren't intentionally taught. I think that, in fact, sometimes at churches that's intentionally taught, but only in a religious setting that you can only feel good because we're talking about Jesus. Well,
Mm.
if that's the case, then why don't we talk about Jesus all the time and feel good? But no, you got to only do that when you're at church. But they stopped talking about Jesus really, really early in one's life. Jesus loves me, yes, I know, is a nursery rhyme that doesn't last into high school. um, so that whole quality of our civilization is to train up a child to do what he's told to do. And so that's the direct product of that. That's who you are, is who you are is what you've been told to do.
Mhm.
And that the real question, or let us say, if the question is who are you, the real answer is not only that you're just the sum total of all the stuff that you're learning, have learned, and includes still learning. But
Yeah.
another way of saying it is that because of that, you're just a moving target. How can you pin down who you are when you're a moving target? That's like saying where the train is when it's on the road. Yeah. Sorry, trains are not on roads; they're on tracks. I
No,
got
the car.
it.
The car.
So, knowing that everything is a moving target, that things are going up, things are going down, and trying to pinpoint things with accuracy is the critical mind thinking at its best, rather than the nurturing thinking, which is everything is okay, everything is fine, there's no problems. No need to go pinpoint the problem because there are no problems.
Mm.
And so that's the nourishing point of view. And so we begin to nourish ourselves, and with that nourishment comes that piti sukha.
Yeah.
In along comes with that the next one, and that is unremitting relaxation, that you can stay relaxed even when the police is rolling down your window. You can stay relaxed. Why? Because why? Because you remember it's unremitting. It's part of the program now. So no worries, mate, goes all the way down to that level, but it needs to be rehearsed. It needs to be practiced. This, by the way, is step 4 of Anapanasati, and it's kind of an additional skill in the collection of things for the first jhana. But it's not always there. It is only in certain suttas to where the sixth item is listed, and that sixth item is the body's relaxed. So if you're sitting in meditation and the body's in pain, one thing's for sure is you're not in first jhana. You're in pain. To where first jhana is very comfortable. And in fact, it's completely satisfying. And that's the key ingredient of it. So in the Sambhojana, then that whole feeling of at peace and at ease, and everything is all right and easy peasy and everything is relaxed, then that's unremitting relaxation is in fact a factor of enlightenment. Right? Because uptight is not relaxed, and relaxed or uptight is not enlightened.
Mm.
That in fact, uptight is almost the same as stretching or pulling, that things are tight, as if there is still a fetter or a bondage that's keeping us from floating free. But when we cut all the fetters, then you float. That's also this quality then of the fourth item of the Sambhojana, is at peace, which means now you're floating. There's nothing grave or no gravity left. There's nothing pulling you down, that you're free now to float mentally. So that then gives rise to the fifth item on the list, is, I think it's equanimity. I'm actually right now not even remembering all of them. Do you remember the later ones? I know
Uh,
that after
I
this is,
have it. Well, I have it in front of me, so that helps. But in this translation, anyways. They say mindfulness, investigation, energy, rapture, tranquility, immersion, and equanimity.
oh, I did remember them all. I'm just counting wrong.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because we've already, wait a minute. No, okay. All right.
You talked about
Number
you talked
4 is
about
Piti Sukha.
yeah, you
Okay,
talked
so
about
Piti
piti sukha.
Sukha, and they
Yeah.
use the word rapture there. I cannot think of a worse translation.
Okay. It's Bhikkhu Sujata, Sujato came
No,
up with.
it's not a particular monk's translation. It's the dictionary they all use.
Okay.
And that dictionary is put together by people who didn't know what they were doing, but they put together a lexicon when they were doing the first translations, and now we need a whole redo.
I often think that when I'm reading, like, because I read Bhikkhu Bodhi's translations most of the time, and I'm very like happy that he translates it, but I am often wondering, just what you're saying of like, yeah, I mean, you kind of wish that you could speak the original language, and yeah, but anyways.
Well, as an aside point, Sutta Central, Sujato's translations, you can open and bring the Pali language line by line, and then you can look at their dictionary by rolling over each Pali word or clicking on it or whatever. That's an excellent way to learn Pali.
And I know, I mean, I lived in Sweden for a lot of years, and I learned Swedish, and I know when you learn another language, your mind starts working in a different way. That like that's just the natural thing that you pick up, and it's weird to see your mind do that. But yeah, I often think that about Pali, that what would that what would that change?
Okay.
And
Well, the society that we're in is that I strongly encourage any student who is interested to become interested in actually learning the Pali, so that you can see for yourself what the Buddha said, rather than reading the translations that we already know are problematic. The only problem now that you have is, how can you figure out what the actual Pali word meant in the first place? Which means that you have to have some background in Indo-European languages and that kind of stuff. But it's a whole new, different kind of way of looking at it, in the sense that you investigate every word. Right. An example of that is there's a word in Sutta number 38 that is normally referred to as Gandhaba. Now, the traditional English language translation of that is the word spirit, to be reborn, as opposed to merely spirit. That they actually add that rebirthing kind of thing in it, because the translators are in that mentality, and all the translators have translated it like that. But that the etymology of that word Gandhava is actually Ganda, which has to do with singing, and a Gandhava is actually a musician. Or a musical thing, which means that when we're talking about the spirit, we're actually talking about the mood setting, that the woman will get pregnant when it's the right mood. It's not a spirit that is a spook of Uncle George that's been hanging out in the atmosphere, looking and peering through the window until mommy's horny, and then Uncle George comes popping in the room. That's not the story, but that's the story that Western Buddhism hears. That the Gandhava actually is the ambience, or the mood, or the situation. Now, that may not have been scientifically true at the time, but that was the understanding in the day, that the Buddha was not expounding upon and trying to teach rebirth and reincarnation. That it's absolutely dead sure that he says over and over again that he only teaches one thing, dukkha, dukkha, nirodha, and rebirth actually teaches us to become attached to the past, where he's definitely telling us to get rid of the past, get rid of the future. Okay. Let's look at how the mind is reborn in this particular moment. Okay. So this idea, then, back to the Sambhojana, is that when we can see all of this, we're seeing the workings of the mind, and that means that by the time that we're relaxed, that means that we don't spend much time in our own personal hell anymore, nor do we spend our time as a hungry ghost anymore, because we don't fall into great desire and we don't get hot. We're cool, we're chill. That's the word Nibbana. That's what the word Nibbana means, is cool or chill, baby. That's all it means. But why have the Western meditation group made a big deal out of it? A whoop-de-doo. I mean, Nibbana for them belongs up there beside their plastic Jesus in the sky.
Right. I was just going to say, I think it's because you think, well, if I don't have heaven anymore, so I better have something to replace that, but I'm not going to call it heaven. So, yeah.
Right. Rather than just cool, just chill. And so after number 5. What is number 6 and 7 again?
He
I want to hear
says
that.
immersion and then equanimity in his
Okay.
translation.
All right. So the question is, which is the end game? Is it equanimity or is it immersion? Now, the real question is immersion the right word for this?
In another translation, it's concentration.
All right. Is that the right word for it? Because in fact, the Pali word means is samadhi.
Yeah.
And the word samadhi actually is described in several places. And it's not described as either immersion or is it described as concentration.
Okay.
It's described most specifically as unification,
Yeah.
which means gathering all of the other factors together. Well, what factors are we gathering together? We're gathering together the 7 factors of enlightenment. And so the gathering together of the factors is one of the factors. Does
Okay.
that make sense or what?
Okay. Yeah.
Now, the example of that is the yurt. And Nagarjuna used that example with Melinda during those dialogues, which was about 100 BC. So it was about 300 years after the Buddha died, where they actually had to give examples because by then people had forgotten what the word samadhi actually meant in the time of the Buddha.
Okay.
And so we can use that in the sense of a teepee, an American, a Native American teepee, has ridge poles. Those ridge poles, each one of them by themselves, you stand it in the air, it's going to fall over.
Right.
But if you tie 2 of them together, they'll only fall over in one direction, but not another. If you tie 3 of them together, you got a tripod, you're getting someplace. When you
Yeah.
get 7 poles together, now you've got something going. Okay, now you've got stability. And what is the samadhi? The samadhi is where they all are tied together that gives unity. This is what the samadhi word means. That's why samadhi is associated with jhana, is because gathering together the jhana factors is the samadhi, not what the mind is doing. Okay. So the gathering together of the factors of enlightenment is what they're talking about of the samadhi here. And that a samadhi mind is actually an organized mind. So think of it like this. Think of it as an alarm clock, a big one, old days, an alarm clock. And you wind it up, and it's got gears and springs and all of that in it. And when that alarm clock is clean and it's not full of dirt and dust, and it all of the gears are in the proper shape and not one of the teeth are broken or anything like that, then that clock will be in samadhi and it will function correctly.
I see.
Okay.
Okay.
You can almost think of that samadhi is the end result of general systems theory that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, or that the automobile, the sum of the parts of the automobile, every automobile part scattered all over the yard, you've got an automobile, but you don't have an automobile until they're put together in the correct way. And when they are, now you've got something new, transportation. So this is how we look at the mind as samadhi mind is one that's correctly organized to function correctly when the mind is fit for work, which is precisely what the first jhana is all about, is getting the mind fit for work so that the mind can see how the mind works. And so this is what the word samadhi means. It means that the mind is organized, and a way of thinking about organized is that it is whole or it's unified in the sense that it's got all the pieces and there's nothing missing, which means we don't want anything because we're complete. We've got everything that is needed, and here it is. We've got enough. So with that sense of enough, if we want something, then we're not in samadhi mind. If we lie, that means that we're not in samadhi mind. That means we're just separate, that the truth is here one thing and what we want to have happen is somewhere else. Okay. Also, when we're in doubt, could it be this? Could it be that? I don't know this. I don't know that. What about this? Doubt and worry, that's not unification of mind. But a unified mind is one that's got no place to go because it's got nothing that's making traction. Now, take that in the sense different from concentration. Concentration, to concentrate that alarm clock is like taking a sledgehammer to it and get it down to the smallest package that you can get it into. But then it's not going to function, but we don't care about functioning, we care about concentration. This is how Western meditation sometimes goes wrong because of the bad translations that we've had. And so we all get confused until we begin to understand exactly what the word samadhi means. And then we recognize it doesn't mean concentration at all, just like the word dukkha does not mean suffering. Because almost nobody will tell you, oh, I'm so suffering all the time. But they will admit that they're dissatisfied.
Mm.
And so that's the whole quality then, is to change some of the vocabulary that we use. Because that vocabulary actually rubs us in certain ways and gives us information that is not wholesome. And when things are wholesome, that means that things become unified. That basically you could say that reality is just one thing. It's very big and it's very complex, but it's just one thing. But how many fantasies or how many lies or how many constructed realities can we come up with?
Mm.
Many, many, many. Another example of what we're talking about is when I ask a student how old they are, they'll say, oh, I'm a particular age, 24, 25. And then I says, okay, lie to me. Now, how old are you? And there's no end to the kind of lies we can tell. Right? That in fact, falsehoods is much vaster than the truth. Not only that, but the characteristic of human mind is that not only is it vaster, it's also faster. The old joke is that a lie can make its way all over town while the truth is still getting his pants on. So that means now that we have to do extra diligence on this investigation to start figuring out what's actually true, as well as what's worthwhile, rather than taking somebody else's word for it, which we've been doing all along. And taking somebody else's word for it is basically what the Buddha means by sila bhatta paramasa. Attachments to the way things should be. Okay. And in psychology, Freud would refer to this as the superego, with the ego, the superego, and the it. But Eric Berne redefined those things to make it simpler and easier to understand by calling it parent, adult, and child. And it's the parent that is that superego, which is also the temporal cortex, and it is the source of all of our criticism and conceptualizations. And basically, it's the storage place for all the junk that we've been told our whole lives. But that's not who we are. Who we are is not what we've been told. But the important point really is it doesn't matter who you are. The important point is that you could change who you are. That's the important point, that we're not stuck with all of that stuff.
Right.
Okay. So the samadhi mind is the one who can throw out all the noise and just be whole. So now we come to the last item on the list of equanimity, and that where in the heck did that come from? Have you ever heard of the word equanimity outside of Buddhism?
Every time I hear that word, I always feel a little bit embarrassed because it feels like one of these academic words that I should know, And I feel a little bit stupid actually, where I'm like, oh yeah, that's because I have to think about it, and I have to be like, oh yeah, that's what that is again. Like, even though I've been hearing it for years, and you're right, I only hear it in Buddhism.
Uh-huh. Well, that the same problem is with the word mindfulness. It's only used in context of Buddhism, like
Yeah,
mindfulness-based stress reduction. They don't want to talk about the Buddha, but we know what they're doing.
right.
So only so these are the problem with some of these words, that the translators really didn't even know what the words meant, and so they had to make up something.
Yeah,
Or sometimes they go way back into history to get a word. Like the word tatatha is often translated as thusness.
right. Yeah,
What century did thus come out of?
yeah, yeah. I haven't gotten that one. Yeah,
So here now, or this present moment is a much better translation than thusness.
yeah. Okay.
So also the word upekkha,
Yeah.
we can understand what it means, but it doesn't necessarily mean balance in the sense of justice with her blindfold holding the scales up.
Okay.
Again, that has to do with a permanency. It has to do with a final exam, and that the judgment has been made, and there it is for all to see for all eternity. That's the kind of way that it's looked at.
Yeah.
A much better way of looking at it, let me give you two examples. One is a teeter-totter. That if a teeter-totter is balanced horizontally, somebody's got to hold it there. The natural balance is that one side or the other is going to become heavy, and all somebody has to do is put some small device on it, and if it's well oiled, it's going to make it. But what the teeter-totter is for the goods going up and down and up and down, and having a ball at it, or having a cycling, okay, and just enjoy the ride. That's what it's all about.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if both kids go over to the other side to ride together, they're not going to go anywhere.
Hmm.
But if they balance, then the seesaw can happen.
Okay.
You could go so far as to say, in that regard, good and evil are in a balance with each other, cycling around one another, up and down and up and down and up and down. And all we have to do as human beings is stop liking one and hating the other and just enjoy the show. It's a spectacular show. And that's what the teeter-totter is all about anyway. That's how things are. They're up and down. They're in cycles. They keep going around, around and around. That's the word samsara. And it's not the point that we can stop the samsara. Rather than what we can do is we can set the mind into observer mode and just enjoy the show.
Okay.
And why do we set ourselves in observer mode? It's because there's nothing to do that needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
Everything is already okay. I don't have to go get my hands dirty just because my mind is dirty. I can clean my mind, and then I don't have to worry about my hands. Here's another example of it. And that is, imagine that you've got a fairly large fishing boat,
Okay.
one of the big ones. And you have a captain on that boat who has been captain on that boat for many, many years. In fact, he was probably a cabin boy in his youth. And that boat can be at high seas, and he's on the bow, and he needs to go to the stern, and he just walks right down there. Now you can have a landlubber, let us say an ancient distant cousin or something, comes on board when he's on in dock, and the landlubber can walk around the boat just fine. He's got no trouble. But now out at sea, when the seas are high, the landlubber's there with his uncle, the captain, and the captain goes to the stern. How is the landlubber going to get to the stern of the boat? He is going to run into things. He's going to be grabbing wires. He's going to be falling down. He may be barfing over the side. He may be going over the side, but he is going to be in collision with a lot of things on his way to the back.
Okay.
Who's got equanimity?
The captain.
Precisely. Precisely so, yes. Why? What we're actually saying is that the captain has sea legs,
Hmm.
and sea legs are a skill to be developed. Equanimity also is a skill to be developed. To be at balance, to be at peace. In fact, you could say that at peace, that's the only place that we can be in order to be in a state of upekkha or in a state of equanimity, because many times we actually do have to take our canoe out into the swamp of the world, which is often turbulent. Can you maintain your equipoise? Can you maintain your balance? Can you maintain your position and heading in a storm, in turbulation? That's what upekkha means. Now,
Okay.
the real question is which comes last, samadhi or upekkha?
Upekkha.
I
In
would
the
claim that samadhi should come last, even though in the text it is second to
text,
the
yeah,
last,
because it's
because it's the
gathering up
one that
all the factors.
because it's gathering up all of the factors.
Okay.
Okay. So that is the short of the seven factors of enlightenment, and you can see directly that they are the roots of that is in the Eightfold Noble Path, with only upekkha and pasa as things that are not actually there in the eight, but they're natural outcomes of the practice.
Which one is pasa?
Pasa is tranquility or a peacefulness, that you don't actually have peacefulness as one of the items on the path, that the peacefulness is actually part of kaya nupassana, or part of the body functions in the Anapanasati Sutta. That is number 4 in the Anapanasati, that we mindfully breathe in and mindfully breathe out and mindfully experience and investigate the body. Why? So that we can mindfully relax the body.
Hmm.
Go through, find attentions, and let it go.
Hmm. Why
So
why
that,
is it sometimes translated as the body of the breath and not the
oh, now you're talking about an old argument between Bhikkhus Bodhi and Ajahn Thanissaro. Because of breath does not belong in the text, because it's not in the sutta. That's something that Bhikkhu Bodhi added in braces.
Okay.
And Thanissaro recommended that it get pulled out, and Bodhi, according to the story, agreed to it, but it never got pulled out.
Okay.
And I think
It's also in because the first time I read the Anapanasati was Thich Nhat Hanh's version, and he also does the body of the breath, like, and not the body. But,
all right. Well, now here's where we're coming from that, because they're both correct in a way.
okay.
And the incorrect in a way is, where is the body of breath?
It's within the body.
Where?
Where is the breath?
Well, where is the body of the breath? The kaya, the whole body, the whole show
Well,
is
I
between the
mean,
nostrils here
yeah,
and
and all the
down
way
to the
down.
diaphragm.
Yeah.
Though the word diaphragm in the Pali was wrongly and now often translated as abdomen, giving rise to the idea of navel gazing, when it in fact is the breath that we're watching, not navels, not abdomens. We're
Okay.
watching the breath. And the breath, the body of the breath, stops with this long ridge of muscles.
Okay.
People who play trombones and tubas know all about it, because they have to actually develop those muscles as a skill.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So,
played clarinet.
all right, so you know too, right? Almost
Yeah.
the same thing. The
Yeah.
question is, do clarinet players go off in the corner and to hide and have a competition to who can hold a long clarinet note, or who can get the highest or the lowest note?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, that's it. We're
Yeah.
talking about breath control. That's
Yeah.
exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So musicians learn about that breath control, but a lot of people, they don't. So you can use that skill to begin to monitor the extent of your breath. Because with the musicians, they're worrying about, or they're working with, or they're operating with the bottom of the breath. And when people are watching the nose tip, they're watching the top of the breath. And that one of the practices is to follow the breath or chase the breath, in the sense that the thought mind moments are going from, as you start to be in breath, you start watching here and you begin to notice down until by the end of the in breath that you're in the belly.
Hmm.
And then on the out breath, as you begin to breathe out, you begin to work your way back up, feeling everything. And then you get into the throat and start massaging the underside of the throat out into the nostrils.
Hmm.
Okay. This is one of the techniques, and it really does have the mind to settle down and start focusing, because almost every mind moment now is a mind moment of being in the body.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Also, when thinking about the breathing, one of the ways of looking at it is that especially with the nose tip, that it becomes so popular, there's two issues about it. Number one, nothing like that was ever in the suttas. That the sutta talks about, at best, body of breath,
Yeah.
not one place. Okay.
Yeah.
Number two, we do know where it showed up later in the literature, but it shows up later in the literature in the Pali language that means a cave. Well, a cave is at least inside of something, and the nose tip is outside of the cave at
Right.
best.
Right.
So where in the language of the Buddha, it's still always the cave. Well, what is the cave then is the intact breathing tract, but one of the important points of the cave is in the neck area. To
Hmm.
be able to follow the breath means that it's really easy to get the sensations in the nostrils. But then where do you begin to lose the sensation? How far in does it go before you begin to lose it?
Hmm. I often feel it in the back of my head, and it often feels like I'm imagining something, but it's like I'm sure it
Well, no,
happens
there's
so much
actually,
that it's
but
yeah.
there
Go
is
ahead.
movement. You cannot breathe well without moving the neck.
Okay. But it's almost like in the like just above. I guess that is on the neck. Yeah, I guess it's right above the neck. But because I feel the breath come in, and it's like, especially I feel it like kind of filling the back of my head
Okay.
somehow.
And
But
and
yeah.
in the back, or back there someplace, is about the same level as below the nose tip.
Oh, okay.
Something back inside, back in here. Okay.
That makes sense.
There
Yeah.
there is something interesting about the throat. What organ, let us say, what part or structure of the brain is closest to the throat?
The spine, or like the
Oh, the
nerves of
spine's
the,
in
or
back. Up
oh,
front,
right, that's true.
close to
Yeah.
the throat, is what is called the amygdala,
Okay.
which
What
is
is that?
also the source of fear. That's the source, that's the organ that pumps out the juice that later becomes adrenaline. And it does it
Okay.
through the pineal and the pituitary glands. But so basically, when we talk about it in the sense of soothing the savage beast, the
Hmm.
amygdala is the part of the brain that becomes the beast.
Okay.
Well, if soothing the savage beast then can be done with breathing, by becoming mindful of what's happening on the inside of the head in the breathing. How far down can you gain sensation and start playing with it as a toy? Actually,
Hmm.
literally massaging that part of the neck, which is the closest thing you can do to massaging the amygdala.
Mm.
Hmm. So this is just a kind of philosophy, but you ask about the body of breath. Well, the body of breath has got a whole lot to
Yeah.
it. And we're talking about coming into the cave and going down the cave, and how far down in can you actually feel it before you have to go then to the outside in order to experience going out in, just like you did before. That there's so far in that you can go before you can't go in any inner.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That there is no sensations in the basilica. of the lungs. This is why people can have breast cancer and cough themselves, and their whole lungs are rotted out, and they don't even know it.
Okay. Because you don't have any pain sensors in the lungs.
Not in the lungs themselves, but boy, the rib cage and not the ribs themselves, but all of the baby back ribs that you've got. That
Yeah.
does feel sensation, believe me.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's also kind of proprioceptic in the sense that you can actually feel and sense the breathing itself. Start paying attention to the fact that yeah, there's stuff going up and down and
Yeah.
up and down this way and up and down this way and back here. The chest goes up. All kinds of things happen with the breath when we begin to take long, easy, deep breaths that we are watching and paying attention to.
Okay.
And it is of great value, enormous value, so says the Buddha,
Okay.
to do this. Why? Because by doing this, for one thing, we're in the here now. How can you have worry problems when you're just sitting there enjoying the fact that you're still alive, breathing?
Mm.
What a marvelous toy this breathing box is.
Yeah.
And so start seeing it that way as something to be investigated, something to be played with, something to have fun with. But this is of all the toys that you've ever had in your life, no matter how expensive, the human body is the absolute best toy you'll ever get.
Mm.
And most of us only play with just a small piece of it. And so you can play with the throat. You can feel that stuff. You can feel yourself sitting up, that you can play with your posture. You can find positions where that feels really good to get yourself really relaxed and say, hey, how that feels so good. That's what we're meaning about this, getting the body relaxed, getting it feeling good, getting it comfortable.
Okay.
Because if the body's uncomfortable, how in the world can you get your mind satisfied?
Mm. It's quite
So it's
difficult. Yeah.
yeah, it's a package deal. And this is what they're pointing at. Okay. Now there's other parts of the body, and in reality, yes, but they're not so much. That in fact, you could go so far as to say there are other things like that. For instance, in the Satipatthana, it talks about the hands, of watching the hands and moving the hands. Well, while we're sitting in meditation, all we've got is the breathing. So we don't really need to do much with the hands, except work with the mudras. But then there are things that we can do with the hands. For instance, we can begin to feel the touch. We could get the sensations of the hands very much alive again. That we can rub the thumbs together with the idea of which thumb knows the other one's there first.
Mm.
Which thumb feels which thumb when you're feeling your thumbs. It's a very interesting mind game to play. And remember, we got all the tools we need to play these games. Is to get in touch with the hands,
Mm.
to feel them, to know when things are crawling on the body. That's especially useful in Thailand. But to know because you can feel the skin, you can feel the touch. One thing is that when you're laying in bed at night, you already know what posture your body is in. You do not have to open your eyes to look at your body posture. You know inside already. So we need to be able to then start monitoring that and knowing that internal sensational system that we have that's called proprioceptic sensing, which is slightly different than the touch sensation. This is deep body stuff that we can begin to see. So I can feel the touch of the hands, but where their positions are is proprioceptic, not touch, but it's still kind of touching. Okay, so this is the kind of playing that we can do with the body that is a mindfulness of the body that's beyond the breathing, to where the breathing part is also extremely useful. And so it doesn't even matter whether you say body of breath or the whole body,
Okay.
because they're all there for us.
Mm.
So this is a way of looking at it instead of saying, oh, this is right and that's wrong. No, we can take both sides and look at it from other perspective and figure out which is the better view.
Okay.
Because it's good to go back and forth. But in fact, spending time with the hands is really an excellent thing to do. For one
Okay.
thing, you don't lose your property so much because you're aware and mindful of where you set things down when you were in a hurry to get to the toilet.
That would be useful for me.
Yeah, as we take a
Could
mind moment to realize I am using my hands, I am putting something down here. So we'll talk about that kind of practice later because there's a whole set of practices that come out of the old Buddhism that have to do with training of this.
okay.
That's part of the Satipatthana, or how to deal with the Kaya Nupassana. But in all cases, it has to do with taking control and not letting the body do what it does on automatic pilot,
Okay.
and doing something consciously. An
Okay.
example of that is one student would pick at her fingers,
Hmm.
pick at the cuticles, pick at the fingernails, and she wanted to stop that. And so I gave her the exercise: instead of the fingers picking on each other, have the fingers nourish each other.
Mm.
So that you start doing this and start rubbing your hands together and feel how nice it is to be in
Mm.
touch with it. So instead of mindlessly having the fingers pick at each other, now we're mindfully allowing the fingers to enjoy each other.
Oh, that's
This
nice.
again is Kaya Nupassana. This is a mindfulness of the body.
Mm. That's really nice.
It does. It feels so nice. I mean, these guys are marvelous. I mean, I cannot think of a more marvelous tool that the human has other than the hands.
Yeah.
Marvelous toys to play with. So this is the Kaya Nupassana, part of the Vedana Nupassana. If we could begin to control the body by controlling the mind and controlling the thoughts with the mind so that they're wholesome thoughts, we begin to feel good.
Mm.
We actually work with the feelings kind of indirectly, in the sense that we talk ourselves into feeling good and then having the body invite the feelings into feeling good. And we can just really talk ourselves into seventh heaven.
Mm.
You can feel the way you want to feel. Your whole life you spent feeling the way you were told to feel,
Right.
or that you figured was the right way to feel in this particular situation. Like those big adults are yelling at me, and I'm afraid the best thing I can do is throw a boohoo or a tantrum or something. And we need to find out that that's not the right way to live. That let them do what they're going to do. That's just part of the show.
Okay.
And we can remain in the state of equanimity. In other words, when they're fussing at us, there we are out on that boat with in rough seas. Can we walk down the deck or not? Can we
Okay.
handle this or not?
That makes sense.
Okay. And the answer to that is, well, most of the time we can. It's only when it's in high seas that we really need the skill.
Yeah.
We need to remember that we've got the skill, that we can handle anything.
Okay.
So handling anything, that's Upekkha. That's another word for it. We can handle anything. Not going to teeter my totter. Yeah. Or another
That's great.
expression of it is, can't touch me. You've heard that song, na 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 na, na, can't touch me.
Yeah. Can't touch this. Do, 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 do.
All right. And another expression of that would be what the Buddha says, is that uh, though he intends to blame me, he only praises me. Now that's an expression of the Buddha.
Okay.
When somebody's trying to blame him, he can see the praise in it.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, in one sutta, this happened when a monk disrobed and quit, and he was in the village gossiping about it, saying that there was nothing special about the Buddha. There was no superhuman qualities about him at all. All he taught was uh, dukkha, dukkha nirodha, but he's pretty good at that. Okay, and then when that got back to the Buddha, he says that this guy tries to blame me, but in fact he's praising me because all I teach is dukkha, dukkha nirodha.
Yeah.
Another example would be that a student would criticize a teacher because he's dogmatic, that everything he sees is either black or white, right?
Mhm.
The answer to that is that when you have seen black and you have seen white, you know the difference between black and white. And not only that, but you're pretty sure of yourself. You've seen it before, and then why go mamby-pamby around? In other words, confidence is what this guy is criticizing. And I would say that when he would criticize me for being confident, I would take that as praise rather than blame, knowing that he said it in blame. It's really praise.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because if you're confident, then you're like, well, this
Right.
works. You
That
know,
shows the same thing.
this is just
Right.
how it is.
That's
So I
confidence.
mean,
Right. That's the whole point. We want to get things so that we're
I'd rather. I
confident.
mean, I think I'd rather have a teacher that's confident than a teacher that is uh, kind of namby-pamby, like, oh,
Well,
this way and that
what
way.
if, but what if you disagree with that teacher that is
Well,
confident?
I don't know. I mean,
Wouldn't you
some
perhaps walk away disgruntled saying he's so dogmatic? When in fact, the real issue is not whether he's dogmatic or not, it's whether you disagree with him or not.
right.
Mhm. So there's that whole aspect of it. And so, in that regard, it's still praise.
Hmm.
So, that's the way that the Buddha looks at it is that we can turn any lemon into lemonade. When you have the lion's attitude, can't touch me.
Okay.
That even the criticism is actual praise.
That's a good way of looking at it.
There's another sutta on that regard where the Buddha is actually discussing the fact that he is accused of teaching atheism. Now, what do you mean atheism? Because atheism is a brand new word. That's not a word that the Buddha would use. What did they say instead? They said, upon the break of the body, the existing being is annihilated.
Yeah, I was going to say he was accused of teaching nihilism, right?
Well, no, that's not nihilism. Nihilism
Okay.
is ain't nothing there, never was. You're
Okay.
just a piece of meat.
Okay.
Okay. And this is what is called annihilationism, that the
Okay.
existing being does exist, but he's annihilated at death.
Okay.
To where the eternalist says, oh no, I'm going to go right on. I'm going to be God's magic football. And
Hmm.
he's going to either kick me into heaven or kick me into hell, depending upon his choice. um, but the Buddha was neither of those three. And then, in
Okay.
fact, he says, even though I'm accused of this, I still, both formerly and now, only teach one thing, and that is dukkha, dukkha nirodha. Well, dukkha, dukkha nirodha really doesn't fit into those three isms. But we could put cyclism in there, and that would work. Or maybe temporarilyism. He's a temporarilyist.
That makes sense.
That he's not a nihilist, and he's not an annihilationist, and he's not eternalist. That things pop up and then they go away.
Mm.
And
That's just
that's
how
where
it
he
is.
says, even though there are those who will revile me, for such, I do not have any dejection of the heart on that account, nor if someone reveres me on, I do not have any elation of the account, of the any elation of the heart on that account. In other words, he can control his elation and dejection of the heart. That's his choice. And it's not dependent upon whether he's getting blamed or praised. And then the magic statement comes. And it's very high class language for Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, but I like the really down home version of it. And it says, why does the Buddha have that? It's because he's been there, done that. Been there, done that. Been praised before, been condemned before. No worries, equanimity, or upekkha. In other words, I can handle those arrows being slung at me, whether one's praise or the other one's blame. I've dealt with all that stuff before. So that's also the attitude of the Buddha, which all of this is lion's attitude. Can't touch me.
I I still am a little bit confused as to the difference between the Upekkha and the Pasa, or maybe I guess they go together, but
The Upekkha and what?
and the Pasa, like in the tranquility, like because in the seven factors they sound very similar, like tranquility versus equanimity. You know, number 5 and number 7.
One is more relaxed in the body.
Okay. Okay.
And the other one is more relaxed in the attitude.
Okay. Okay.
One's relaxed to the body. That's why it's in the Kaya Nupassana, is relaxing of the body, which
Okay.
then becomes unremitting, relaxed. And then the other one, the Upekkha, would be unremitting, relaxed attitude.
Okay.
Well, you've been reading. You've got a lot of questions.
Yeah, I read too much probably, but
Well, I got a new book for you to read.
what's that?
It's called Joe's Mind.
Yeah.
Go watch,
Yeah.
go pay attention, go notice, but notice in the sense of, hey, that goes. I don't need that one.
Yeah.
And literally start to talk yourself into feeling really good.
Okay. I'll work on that one. That's a good
All
book
right.
to work on.
Yeah, it is. Excellent. Well, why don't
All
we
right.
finish now?
Yeah.
And I'll talk
Thank
to
you
you
very
later.
much. Yeah. Yeah. When should we talk again?
Whenever you like, every
Okay.
2 or 3 days.
Okay. All right. I'll give you a call in a few days then. All right.
Excellent. All right, Joe.
Thank you
We'll
very
see.
much. I'll try and practice everything and thank you.
Oh, don't practice everything, just one thing at a time, the
All right.
wholesome stuff,
Okay. I'll do that. All right. Bye-bye. Have a
Tease
nice
you
day.
later.
Okay. Bye.